The DNA results came back on a Thursday, 50 years to the day since Clara Simmons walked to a bus stop and vanished. The Texas Ranger holding the file didn't believe in coincidences anymore. The bones they pulled from behind the old Judge's ranch matched the missing Maid from 1974, but it was the second test that made his hands shake. Soil samples from her grave showed she'd been buried within 3 hours of leaving work. Someone had been waiting for her, someone who knew her route, someone who had the power to make a black domestic worker disappear without a single detective asking why. Her daughter Denise, now 66 years old, sat across from him holding a faded photograph. Clara in her uniform, standing on Oak Street, the last place anyone admitted seeing her alive. "My mother didn't run away," Denise said quietly. "She heard something she wasn't supposed to hear." The ranger nodded. He'd read the notebook they found in the lawyer's safe. Names, dollar amounts, a land deal that would have destroyed one of Texas's most powerful families. Clara Simmons had been murdered for taking notes, and the man who helped bury her, he'd been walking free for half a century. Before we go further, I want to welcome you to Dark Evidence. Whether you're watching from the United States, England, Germany, or anywhere else in the world, drop a comment below and let me know where you're from. And if stories like this one, stories about the people history tried to erase, matter to you, then please subscribe. It helps the algorithm show these forgotten voices to more people who need to hear them. Now let's go back to June 1974. Clara Simmons woke up that Thursday morning the same way she always did, 5:30, no alarm needed. She made coffee in the small kitchen of her rental house on the east side of Dallas, kissed her sleeping daughter on the forehead, and caught the 6:15 bus to the Riverside estate. She'd worked for the Riverside family for 8 years, long enough to know which rooms to clean first, long enough to understand that wealthy people didn't really see the help. They talked around you, sometimes right through you, like you were furniture that happened to move. Clara didn't mind. The job paid better than the factory. She sent money to her mother every month and was saving for Denise's college fund. Her daughter was smart, 16 years old, and already talking about becoming a lawyer. That made Clara proud. The Riverside house sat on 3 acres in Highland Park, where the lawns looked like paintings and the driveways held cars worth more than Clara would make in 10 years. Mr. Riverside owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Dallas. His wife hosted charity luncheons. Their son, Michael, was 21 and fresh out of law school. On paper, they were the kind of family Texas loved to celebrate. But Clara had learned something working in that house. Rich people had secrets, the kind that didn't show up in newspaper photographs. That Thursday, Mrs. Riverside told Clara she'd need to stay late. There was a dinner party, important guests. Clara would serve, then clean up afterward. "Of course, Mrs. Riverside," Clara said. She always said yes, she needed this job. The guests arrived at 7. Clara recognized some of them from previous dinners: local businessmen, a city councilman, and County Judge Raymond Thornton, Mrs. Riverside's brother. He came to the house often, always in a good mood, always loud. Clara moved through the dining room like a shadow, filling water glasses, clearing plates, invisible. But she wasn't deaf. Around 8:30, the men moved to Mr. Riverside's study. Clara was in the hallway outside, collecting dirty dishes from a side table when the voices started rising. She shouldn't have stopped to listen. She knew better. But Judge Thornton's voice carried through the door, angry and sharp. "You're telling me we can't move on the Henderson tract after everything we've already paid?" Mr. Riverside's response was quieter, harder to hear. Something about zoning delays and environmental concerns. "Then we make the concerns disappear," the judge said. "I've got the planning commission in my pocket. We falsify the inspection reports, backdate the approvals, and break ground next month. Nobody's going to question it." Clara's hand tightened on the serving tray. There was more. Numbers. Dollar amounts that made her stomach turn. 50,000 here, 30,000 there. Payments to city officials whose names Clara recognized from the news. Men who were supposed to be protecting the public. This wasn't just business. This was fraud, corruption, maybe even criminal. And Clara had heard every word. She moved away from the door as quietly as she could, her heart pounding. In the kitchen, she set down the tray and pulled out the small notebook she kept in her apron pocket. She always carried it, used it for grocery lists and reminders. Now she wrote down everything she could remember: names, amounts, the Henderson Tract, planning commission, falsified reports. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know what she was going to do with this information. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But something in her gut told her to write it down, just in case. The dinner party ended around 9:30. Clara finished cleaning, while the guests said their goodbyes in the foyer. She kept her head down, washing dishes, wiping counters, trying to look like someone who hadn't heard anything at all. Mrs. Riverside came into the kitchen at 9:45. "You can go now, Clara. Thank you for staying late." "Yes, ma'am." Clara gathered her things: purse, light jacket. The notebook went back in her apron pocket. She walked out the back door and started the 15-minute walk to the Oak Street bus stop. The night was warm, humid, the kind of Texas heat that stuck to your skin even after the sun went down. Clara walked past the big houses with their perfect lawns and thought about what she'd heard. She thought about her mother, who cleaned houses her whole life and never made enough to retire. She thought about Denise, who deserved better than this. She thought about powerful men who believed they could buy their way out of anything. Maybe someone needed to know what they were doing. Maybe someone needed to stop them. She reached Oak Street at 9:47. The bus was due in 8 minutes. Clara stood at the corner under the streetlight and waited. A car turned onto Oak Street behind her, dark sedan, moving slowly. Clara glanced back but didn't think much of it. People lived in this neighborhood. Cars drove through all the time. The sedan pulled up beside her and stopped. The window rolled down. Clara looked over and felt her stomach drop. It was Michael Riverside, the son. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Miss Simmons," he said, "my father wants to talk to you. Get in." Clara's throat went dry. "I'm just waiting for my bus." "The bus can wait. Get in the car." There was something in his voice, something that made the hair on Clara's neck stand up. She thought about the notebook in her pocket. She thought about the conversation she'd overheard. She thought about how easy it would be for a black maid to disappear in a city where nobody was watching. "I really should get home," she said. Michael's smile vanished. "I'm not asking." The passenger door opened, and Clara Simmons, 42 years old, a woman who had never done anything wrong in her life, had to make a choice. She could get in the car, or she could run. But where would she run to? Who would believe her? Who would protect her against a family like the Riversides? So she got in. The door closed. The sedan pulled away from the curb, and Oak Street was empty again. Just another quiet corner in a neighborhood where bad things weren't supposed to happen. At 10:05 p.m., the bus arrived at the stop. Nobody was waiting. Back at home, Denise Simmons sat at the kitchen table doing homework. She glanced at the clock. Her mother should have been home by now. The late shift usually ended by 10. She kept working. By 11, she started to worry. By midnight, she knew something was wrong. But she didn't know, couldn't have known, that her mother was already dead, and that it would take 50 years for anyone to care. Denise Simmons didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, watching the street, waiting for her mother to come home. Every pair of headlights made her heart jump. Every car that passed without stopping made her chest tighter. By 6 in the morning, she knew she had to do something. She called the Riverside house. A woman answered, not her mother, the new maid, probably. "Is Clara Simmons there?" "Who?" "Clara Simmons. She worked late last night." "Oh no, honey. She left around 10. Mrs. Riverside said she went home." Denise's hands went cold. "Are you sure?" "That's what I was told." The line went dead. Denise stood in the kitchen holding the phone. Her mother left at 10. It was now 6 in the morning, 8 hours. Clara had never stayed out 8 hours without calling, not once in Denise's entire life. Something was very wrong. At 7:30, Denise walked into the Dallas Police Department. The building smelled like coffee and old paper. A desk sergeant looked up from his newspaper. "Help you?" "I need to report a missing person," Denise said. "My mother didn't come home last night." The sergeant pulled out a form. He didn't look concerned. Name, Clara Simmons. She's 42. She works as a maid in Highland Park. The sergeant wrote slowly. When did you last see her? Yesterday morning. She left for work at 6:15. She was supposed to be home by 10. She never came back. Maybe she stayed with a friend, had a late night. Denise shook her head. My mother doesn't do that. She always comes home. The sergeant set down his pen. He looked at Denise the way you'd look at a child who didn't understand how the world worked. Miss, women like your mother, sometimes they just need a break. Sometimes they meet someone. Sometimes they decide to start over somewhere else. My mother wouldn't leave me. You'd be surprised. He slid the form across the desk. Fill this out, we'll keep an eye out. But honestly, she'll probably show up in a day or two. Denise took the form. Her hands were shaking. What if she doesn't? The sergeant had already gone back to his newspaper. Then we'll look into it. But they never did. 3 days passed, then a week. Denise called the police station every morning. Same desk, sergeant, same tone. No updates yet. She went to the Riverside house, rang the doorbell. A different maid answered, younger, nervous. I'm looking for information about Clara Simmons, Denise said. The maid glanced over her shoulder. I don't know anything about that. She worked here. She disappeared. I'm sorry, I can't help you. The door closed. Denise stood on the porch of that big, beautiful house and felt something crack inside her. These people knew something. They had to. Her mother had been here. She'd left, and then she'd vanished. But nobody would talk to her. Nobody would help. 2 weeks after Clara disappeared, Denise got a call from her mother's landlord. Rent's due. Is your mother coming back? I don't know. Well, I need to know by the end of the month. Denise was 16 years old. She had a younger brother, Marcus, who was 12. They had no father in the picture, no extended family in Dallas, just each other. And now no mother. She dropped out of school the next week, got a job at a grocery store, started paying the rent with money that should have gone to her own future. Marcus cried himself to sleep most nights. Denise lay awake listening, trying not to scream. Their mother was gone, and nobody cared. 1 month after the disappearance, a detective finally called. His name was Officer Raymond Mills. He sounded young, maybe too young. Miss Simmons, I've been assigned to your mother's case. Denise's heart leaped. Did you find her? No, but I'm reviewing the file. I'd like to ask you some questions. They met at a diner. Mills was 26, fresh out of the academy. He had Clara's missing person file in front of him, barely 5 pages. Your mother worked for the Riverside family, he said. Yes. Did she ever mention any problems there, any conflicts? Denise thought about that. No, she liked the job. The pay was good. Mills wrote something down. Did she have any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt her? My mother was a maid. She didn't have enemies. She just worked and came home. What about a boyfriend? Someone she might have run off with? Denise's jaw tightened. My mother didn't run off. Mills looked uncomfortable. I have to ask these questions. Then ask the right ones. Ask why nobody searched for her. Ask why the Riverside family hired a new maid 3 days after my mother disappeared. Ask why nobody seems to care that a woman is missing. Mills closed the file. I'll do what I can. But he didn't. 2 weeks later, Denise got a message that Officer Mills had been reassigned. Traffic duty. Someone else would be handling the case. Nobody ever called her again. The months blurred together. Denise worked 40 hours a week at the grocery store, took care of Marcus, paid the bills. Every night she looked at her mother's empty chair at the dinner table and felt the weight of it. Clara's uniform still hung in the closet. Denise couldn't bring herself to move it. In 1976, Denise tried again. She went back to the police station. A different sergeant this time. She explained everything. Her mother, the disappearance, the lack of investigation. The sergeant pulled up the file on a computer. He frowned. Says here the case was reviewed and closed. Closed? Denise's voice cracked. Nobody ever found her. The file says probable runaway. No evidence of foul play. There was no investigation. How could there be no evidence? The sergeant looked sympathetic but useless. I'm sorry. Without new evidence, there's nothing we can do. Denise walked out of that police station and sat in her car for 20 minutes. She didn't cry. She was too angry to cry. Her mother hadn't run away. Her mother was dead, and the people who killed her were still walking around free. In 1979, Clara's mother, Denise's grandmother, died of a heart attack. Her last words were, "Where's my Clara?" Denise held her hand and lied. "She's coming, Grandma. She'll be here soon." But Clara never came, and Denise stopped believing anyone ever would. She kept working, raised Marcus, watched him graduate high school, watched him leave for college, built a life on top of a hole that never filled. But she never stopped thinking about that Thursday night in June 1974. She never stopped wondering what her mother had seen, what her mother had heard, what had been so dangerous that someone decided Clara Simmons needed to disappear. And every year on the anniversary, Denise would pull out the missing person file, the one she'd requested copies of, and read through the 5 pathetic pages. No leads, no suspects, no justice. Just a black woman in a maid's uniform who'd vanished into nothing because nobody thought her life was worth investigating. But Denise knew better. Her mother mattered, and someday, somehow, she'd prove it. In February 1976, something unexpected happened. Denise got a phone call from a detective she'd never heard of. His name was Robert Chen. He worked in the cold case division. "Miss Simmons, I've been reviewing unsolved missing persons cases from 1974. Your mother's file came across my desk." Denise's heart stopped. "You're reopening the investigation. I'd like to ask some questions first. Can we meet?" They met at the same diner where she'd met Officer Mills 2 years earlier. Detective Chen was older, maybe 45. He had tired eyes but a sharp way of listening. He spread Clara's file on the table. It was thicker than Denise remembered. "I've been a detective for 20 years, Chen said, "and this case bothers me. Your mother disappeared after working late at a prominent family's home. No investigation was conducted. The case was closed within 2 months. That's not standard procedure." Denise leaned forward. "So you believe me? You think something happened to her?" "I think the case deserves a real look." He pulled out a notebook. "Tell me everything you remember about that night." Denise told him. The late dinner party, the phone call to the Riverside house, the new maid who said Clara had left at 10, the police who didn't care. Chen wrote it all down. "Did your mother ever mention anything unusual about the Riverside family? Any concerns?" "No. But she kept to herself about work. She said rich people's business wasn't hers to talk about." Chen nodded slowly. "I'd like to interview the Riverside family, get their statement on record." "Nobody's talked to them?" "Not according to this file." He tapped the folder. "I'll fix that." For the first time in 2 years, Denise felt something like hope. Detective Chen filed a formal request to interview the Riverside family. He scheduled it for March 15th, 1976. He told Denise he'd call her after with an update. March 15th came and went. No call. Denise waited 3 days, then called the police station. "I'm trying to reach Detective Chen. He's not available." "When will he be available?" "I can't say." The line went dead. Denise called back every day for a week. Same answer, not available. Finally, a different officer picked up. "Detective Chen's been reassigned." "Reassigned where?" "Traffic division." Denise felt the room tilt. He was working a case, my mother's case. All his cases have been redistributed. To who? "I can't give out that information." She slammed the phone down so hard it cracked. "Traffic division." Just like Officer Mills. Someone was making sure nobody looked too close at Clara Simmons. Denise went to the police station in person, demanded to speak to someone in charge. A lieutenant came down, middle-aged, balding, annoyed. "I want to know why Detective Chen was reassigned. Personnel decisions are internal matters. He was investigating my mother's disappearance." The lieutenant's face didn't change. "Your mother's case is closed. There's no active investigation." "Chen said he was reopening it." Detective Chen made an error in judgment. The case doesn't meet the criteria for cold case review. "Why not?" "Because there's no evidence of foul play. Your mother was an adult who left of her own free will." Denise's voice shook. You don't know that. We know enough. He turned to leave. Wait, what about the interview? Chen was supposed to talk to the Riverside family. The lieutenant stopped. Something flickered across his face. That interview didn't happen. Why not? Because it's not necessary. He walked away before she could respond. Denise stood in that police station lobby and understood something she should have understood years ago. This wasn't incompetence. This was a cover-up. 3 weeks later, Denise requested a copy of her mother's case file through the Freedom of Information Act. It took 2 months to arrive. When it did, she spread it across her kitchen table and read every page. 5 pages had become 3. The bus driver's statement, the one that said he'd been on duty that night and Clara never boarded, was gone, just missing. No explanation. A neighbor's report about seeing a dark sedan on Oak Street around 10 p.m., also gone. Officer Mills's notes from their diner meeting vanished. What remained was bare bones, name, date, physical description, and one line at the bottom, case closed, probable runaway. No further action required. Denise's hands shook as she held those 3 thin pages. Someone had gone into the file and removed anything that suggested Clara hadn't just walked away. Someone was erasing her mother. She made copies of everything, hid them in 3 different places. If someone could make files disappear, she wasn't taking chances. In 1982, Denise had saved enough money to hire a private investigator. His name was Frank Delacroix, former cop, now working independently. He had a small office above a pawn shop. "I'll be honest," Delacroix said after hearing her story. "This sounds like it goes deep. Highland Park families, missing police reports, reassigned detectives, that's not random." "So you'll take the case?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Let me make some calls first, see what I can find out." Denise left him a $500 deposit, everything she'd saved in 6 months. 3 days later, Delacroix called her. "Miss Simmons, I need you to come pick up your money." "What? Why?" "I can't take this case." She drove to his office immediately. He was packing boxes. The space looked like he was moving out. "What happened?" Denise asked. Delacroix wouldn't meet her eyes. "I made inquiries about the Riverside family, about your mother. And I was told very clearly to let it go." "Told by who?" "People who matter." He handed her an envelope with her $500. "I'm sorry, I can't help you." "You're scared." "I'm smart." He looked at her then and his face was pale. "You should be scared too. Let your mother rest, move on with your life." "Someone killed her." "Probably, but you'll never prove it. And if you keep digging, you might end up like her." Denise took the money and walked out. She sat in her car for 10 minutes, trying not to scream. Everyone was scared. Everyone knew something, and nobody would help her. That night, Denise went through her mother's things again. The uniform still in the closet, a few photos, some jewelry, and in the bottom of an old shoebox, something Denise had forgotten about. Clara's notebook, the small one she carried in her apron. Denise had found it in her mother's room weeks after the disappearance. She'd flipped through it then. Grocery lists, reminder notes, nothing important. But now she looked closer. The last few pages had entries from June 1974, shopping lists, a reminder about Marcus's school project, and then, on the very last page, something different. Names, dollar amounts, Henderson Tract, Planning Commission. Falsified reports. The handwriting was rushed, scared. Denise's breath caught. Her mother had written something down, something she'd overheard. Something worth remembering, or maybe something worth hiding. Denise read those notes 5 times. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Her mother had witnessed something, some kind of deal, some kind of fraud, and someone had found out. Denise closed the notebook and held it against her chest. This was evidence, real evidence. This proved her mother hadn't just run away. She could take it to the police. But the police had already proven they wouldn't help. They'd bury it just like they'd buried everything else. She could take it to the newspapers. But who would believe a black grocery clerk accusing one of Dallas's most powerful families of murder? So Denise did the only thing she could do. She hid the notebook. A neighbor came out onto her porch. "You looking for Jerome?" "Yes, we were supposed to meet." The neighbor shook her head. "He left this morning with 2 suitcases. Told me he was visiting family for a while. Didn't say when he'd be back." Denise felt cold all over. "Did he seem scared?" "Now that you mention it, yeah, he did." Denise drove home in silence. Someone had gotten to Jerome, either threatened him or paid him off. Either way, he was gone. That night, her phone rang at 11 p.m. Denise picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice, older, calm. "Mrs. Foster?" Nobody called her Mrs. Foster. She'd never married Thomas. "Who is this?" "A friend. I'm calling to give you advice." "About what?" "Your mother." Denise sat up straight. "What about her?" "She left 14 years ago. That's the story. That's what happened. You need to accept it." "Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't want to see you get hurt." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. Stop asking questions. Stop digging. Think about your daughter. Think about your future." Denise's blood turned to ice. "You mentioned my daughter." "Carmen, 8 years old, goes to Lincoln Elementary, gets picked up by her grandmother every Tuesday." Denise couldn't breathe. "If you touch her, nobody's going to touch anyone, as long as you let this go." The line went dead. Denise sat on her bed shaking. They knew where Carmen went to school. They knew her mother's schedule. They'd been watching her. For how long? She didn't sleep that night. She called her mother first thing in the morning. "Don't pick up Carmen from school anymore. I'll do it myself." "Why? What's wrong?" "Just trust me, please." Her mother agreed, confused. 2 days later, Denise's car was broken into. She came out of work to find the passenger window smashed. Her purse was still in the back seat. Nothing stolen. But the glove compartment was open, empty. She always kept papers there: registration, insurance, and a copy of her mother's case file. The file was gone. Denise reported the break-in to the police. They took a report, said it was probably kids. But Denise knew better. They weren't looking for money. They were looking for evidence. The next week, something worse happened. A police officer showed up at the grocery store. He was young, early 30s, and he asked to speak with her privately. They walked outside. He didn't introduce himself. "Miss Simmons, I wanted to check in on you." "Check in about what?" "You've been asking questions about an old case, your mother's disappearance." Denise's stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "It's a small city. Word gets around. I have a right to ask questions." The officer nodded. "You do, but sometimes asking questions in the wrong places can cause problems. I'm just making sure you're safe." "Is that a threat?" "It's concern." He handed her a business card. "If you ever feel unsafe, call me." Denise took the card. It had no name, just a phone number. The officer walked away. Denise stood in the parking lot holding that card and understood something terrifying. The police weren't going to protect her. They were part of it. That night, she pulled Carmen close and thought about that phone call. The man who'd mentioned her daughter's name, who knew her school, who knew everything. Denise had 2 choices. She could keep digging and risk losing everything, maybe even Carmen. Or she could stop. Let her mother stay buried. Let the powerful people win. She thought about the notebook hidden in that safe deposit box, the evidence Clara had died protecting. She thought about Jerome Washington, scared enough to pack his bags and run. She thought about Detective Chen and Officer Mills, reassigned the moment they got too close. And she thought about Carmen, 8 years old, who deserved a mother who'd be alive to raise her. Denise made her choice. She stopped asking questions, stopped making calls, stopped searching. But she didn't throw away the notebook, and she didn't forget. She just went quiet. Because sometimes survival means knowing when you're beaten, and sometimes justice has to wait, even if it takes a lifetime. 15 years passed in silence. Denise kept her head down, worked her job, raised Carmen, watched her daughter graduate high school, then college, watched her get married, watched her have a baby. Denise became a grandmother in 2003. The baby was a girl. They named her Clara. When Denise held her granddaughter for the first time, she cried for an hour. Carmen thought it was joy, and it was, but it was also grief. Because Clara Simmons should have been there, should have held this baby, should have seen what her sacrifice had built. But she couldn't. Because someone had made sure she'd never hold anyone again. That same year, Denise saw a news story that made her stomach turn. Michael Riverside had been elected to the Texas State House of Representatives, District 47, landslide victory. The article showed his photo, older now, 50 years old, distinguished, successful attorney, family man, community leader. The article didn't mention that his father had died in 1985. It didn't mention Judge Thornton, who died in 1992. It didn't mention a maid who disappeared in 1974. Denise stared at that photo for a long time. This was the man who'd picked her mother up that night, the man in the dark sedan. She'd never forgotten his face. And now he was a state congressman. Denise wanted to scream, but she stayed quiet. She'd learned that lesson. The powerful always won. But something about seeing Michael Riverside's face in the newspaper woke something inside her, a low, burning anger she'd buried for years. Her mother's case was collecting dust somewhere. Nobody remembered Clara except Denise. Nobody cared except Denise. Maybe it was time to try again. In December 2003, Denise reached out to a journalist named Sarah Mitchell. Mitchell worked for a small independent newspaper and had written several articles about unsolved crimes involving black women in Texas. They met at a coffee shop. Mitchell was 32, sharp, hungry for a story. "Tell me about your mother," Mitchell said. Denise told her everything. The disappearance, the non-investigation, the cover-up, the threats, the notebook she'd hidden away. Mitchell's eyes widened. "You still have the notebook? In a safe deposit box. Can I see it?" Denise hesitated. She hadn't shown it to anyone in over 20 years, but Mitchell seemed different, genuinely interested, not scared. "Maybe," Denise said, "if you promise to be careful." "I promise." They exchanged phone numbers. Mitchell said she'd start researching, look into the Riverside family history, the Henderson track deal, see what she could dig up. For 3 weeks, Denise felt hope again. Then Mitchell called. "We need to meet." Her voice sounded different, tight. They met at the same coffee shop. Mitchell looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. "I started researching the story," Mitchell said. "The Riverside family, the land deal, everything you told me." "What did you find?" "Nothing. I found nothing." "What do you mean?" Mitchell leaned forward. "I mean, all the public records from 1974 are either missing or sealed. Property records, planning commission documents, court files, everything related to the Henderson tract is gone." "Someone erased it?" "Yes. And when I tried to interview people who worked in Highland Park back then, nobody would talk to me. I mean, nobody. I contacted 12 people. 8 didn't return my calls. 4 told me flat out they wouldn't discuss it." Denise felt the familiar weight settling on her chest. "So you're giving up?" "No, I took what I had to my editor. Told him I wanted to do a series on missing black women and systemic failures in police investigations. Your mother would be the centerpiece." "What did he say?" Mitchell looked away. "He killed it. Said it wasn't newsworthy enough, not enough evidence." "You told him about the notebook?" "Yes, he said it wasn't enough, that it would be my word against a state congressman's family, that we'd get sued into oblivion." Denise's throat tightened. "So that's it? That's it? I'm sorry, I really am." Mitchell stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. After I talked to my editor, someone from the Riverside family's legal team contacted the paper. They hadn't even been mentioned in anything I'd written yet. But they knew I was asking questions." "How?" "I don't know, but they sent a cease and desist letter. Said if we published anything defamatory about their family, they'd sue for everything we had." Mitchell left. Denise sat in that coffee shop alone for an hour. They'd gotten to the journalist, just like they'd gotten to everyone else. 2 months later, Denise applied for a loan to help Carmen with a down payment on a house. She'd been saving for years, had good credit, stable job. The loan was denied. She tried another bank, denied. A third, denied. Denise requested her credit report. What she saw made her physically sick. Her credit score had dropped 200 points in 6 months. There were late payments listed on accounts she'd never had, collections notices for debts that didn't exist. Her credit had been destroyed. She spent months fighting it, filing disputes, sending letters, calling credit bureaus. Some of the fraudulent accounts got removed, but the damage was done. She couldn't help Carmen buy the house. Around the same time, Denise applied for a promotion at work, assistant regional manager. She'd been with the company for 28 years. She was qualified. Everyone said she'd get it. She didn't. They hired someone from outside the company, someone with less experience. Denise asked her boss why. He wouldn't give a straight answer, just said the decision came from corporate. 6 months later, her hours got cut, then cut again. By 2005, she was working part-time. Denise wasn't stupid. She knew what was happening. Someone with power and resources was making her life harder, systematically, quietly. They couldn't threaten her anymore. Carmen was grown, married, safe. So instead they were squeezing, making sure Denise stayed poor, stayed powerless, stayed quiet. She thought about going to the police, but what would she say? That she suspected someone was ruining her credit and costing her jobs. She had no proof, no evidence, just a feeling. And feelings didn't mean anything to people in power. Denise stopped searching publicly, stopped talking about her mother, stopped hoping someone would help. But privately, she kept watching. She followed Michael Riverside's career. He moved up, state representative to state senator in 2008. Rumors he might run for Congress. She read every article, studied every photo, looking for something, anything. And she kept the notebook safe. Because even though she'd stopped fighting, she hadn't surrendered. The truth was still there, hidden, waiting. And Denise knew something the powerful people didn't. Time was on her side. Michael Riverside was 65 years old. Judge Thornton's son, the one who'd taken over his father's law practice, was 71. These men were getting old. Old people made mistakes. Old people got sick. Old people confessed. So Denise waited. She worked her reduced hours, helped Carmen raise baby Clara, lived a small, quiet life. But every night before bed, she thought about her mother standing at that bus stop in 1974. Waiting for a bus that would have taken her home. A bus she never got to board because someone decided Clara Simmons knew too much. And Denise swore to herself the same thing she'd sworn for 30 years. Someday someone would pay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. Justice might be slow, but it wasn't dead. In March 2019, Denise got a phone call that changed everything. The woman on the line said her name was Patricia Lawson. She worked for a non-profit called Justice Delayed, an advocacy group for families of unsolved crimes. Miss Simmons, we received a call 3 days ago from a man named Vincent Kowalski. He's a retired police sergeant. He said he has information about your mother's case. Denise's heart stopped. What kind of information? He wouldn't say over the phone, but he specifically asked us to contact you. He wants to meet. Denise hadn't heard anything about her mother's case in 14 years. Now, suddenly, a retired cop wanted to talk. Why now? Denise asked. Patricia's voice softened. He's dying. Stage 4 lung cancer, hospice care. I think he's trying to clear his conscience. Denise closed her eyes. Where is he? Plano, a hospice facility on Parker Road. He said he'd wait for you. Denise took 2 days off work, drove to Plano. The hospice was a low brick building that smelled like antiseptic and flowers. A nurse led her to room 14. Vincent Kowalski was 78 years old, thin as paper, oxygen tubes in his nose, but his eyes were alert. Miss Simmons. His voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for coming. Denise sat in the chair beside his bed. You said you have information about my mother. I do. He coughed, a wet rattling sound. I was a sergeant in 1974, Dallas PD. I worked the Highland Park area. Did you investigate her disappearance? No, I was told not to. Denise leaned forward. Told by who? Kowalski closed his eyes. My lieutenant. He said the case was being handled, that I should focus on other things. I didn't ask questions. I should have, but I didn't. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying, and I'm tired of carrying it. He opened his eyes. 3 weeks after your mother disappeared, I was on patrol near the county line. Got a call about suspicious activity at an old ranch property, Judge Thornton's place. Denise's blood went cold. What did you find? Nothing. When I got there, the judge was standing by the barn, said everything was fine, just some kids trespassing. He sent me away. That's it? No. Kowalski's breathing was labored. As I was leaving, I saw fresh dirt behind the barn, like someone had been digging. The judge said they were putting in a septic line. I believed him. But there was no construction permit filed. I checked later. No septic work was ever done on that property. Denise felt something crack open inside her chest. You think my mother is buried there? I know she is. Kowalski reached for a folder on his bedside table. His hands shook. After I retired, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I pulled old files, made notes. I was too much of a coward to do anything while I was active. But now, he handed her the folder. Inside was a handwritten note, shaky letters. Behind the judge's ranch, we were told to look the other way. Who told you to look the other way? Denise asked. Everyone. My lieutenant, the captain, even the chief. They said the Riverside family and Judge Thornton were important people, that we couldn't go harassing them without evidence. My mother's disappearance was evidence. Not to them. Kowalski coughed again. I'm sorry, I should have done something. I should have pushed back.
Why didn't you?
He looked at her with watery eyes. Because I wanted to keep my job. Because I was scared. Because I was a coward. He paused. Because I didn't think one black maid mattered enough to risk everything. The honesty hurt worse than a lie would have. Denise took the note. Can I keep this? Yes. Take it to the Texas Rangers, not Dallas PD. They can't be trusted. The Rangers, they'll listen. Denise stood to leave, then stopped. Is there anything else? Kowalski nodded slowly. Judge Thornton died in 1992, but his son, Richard Thornton, knows. He was there that night. He helped. Help do what? Move the body, cover it up. He was only 23 then, probably scared, but he did it anyway. Where is Richard Thornton now? Austin. He's a lawyer, big firm, successful, but he knows where your mother is buried. Denise left the hospice with Kowalski's note clutched in her hand. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, shaking. After 45 years, she finally had something real. She drove straight to the Texas Rangers office in Dallas, walked up to the front desk. I need to report information about a cold case murder. The receptionist looked bored. Fill out this form. It's about my mother. She disappeared in 1974. A dying police officer just told me where she's buried. That got attention. A young ranger came down to meet her. His name was Jake Morrison, early 30s, sharp eyes. Denise told him everything. Clara's disappearance, the lack of investigation, the cover-up, Kowalski's deathbed confession, the note about Judge Thornton's ranch. Morrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. This is a serious accusation, he said. I know. Judge Thornton's been dead for 27 years, but his son is alive, and so is Michael Riverside. Morrison wrote down both names. Michael Riverside, the state senator. Yes. You're saying a sitting state senator was involved in a murder in 1974. I'm saying he picked my mother up the night she disappeared. I'm saying she overheard something about an illegal land deal. I'm saying she had proof. And I'm saying someone killed her for it. Morrison studied her face. Do you have this proof? Denise hesitated. The notebook. She'd kept it hidden for 45 years. If she gave it up now, it could disappear. Just like everything else. But this might be her only chance. Yes, she said. I have my mother's notebook. She wrote down what she heard that night. Morrison's expression changed. I need to see it. Not yet. First, you dig where Kowalski said. If you find my mother, then I'll give you the notebook. That's not how this works. That's how it's going to work. Because if I give you that notebook now, and this investigation gets buried like the last one, I'll have nothing left. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fair enough, I'll look into this. But Miss Simmons, if you're wrong about this, if there's nothing at that property, this case stays closed. I'm not wrong. We'll see. 4 days later, Morrison called her. We ran the property records. The old Thornton ranch is still in the family. Abandoned now. We're getting a warrant for ground-penetrating radar. Denise's hands shook. When? Next week, the longest week of Denise's life followed. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, kept thinking about her mother buried in the dirt for 45 years while her killers walked free. Then on a Tuesday morning in April 2019, her phone rang. It was Morrison. "Miss Simmons, we found something." Denise couldn't breathe. "What?" "Human remains, behind the collapsed barn, exactly where Kowalski said. The room spun. We're sending them for DNA analysis. If it's your mother, we'll move forward with a full investigation." Denise hung up the phone and collapsed to her knees. They'd found her. After 45 years, they'd finally found Clara Simmons. But finding her was only the beginning. Now came the hard part, proving who killed her and making them pay. The DNA results came back on May 2nd, 2019. Ranger Morrison called Denise at work. It's her, Clara Simmons' confirmed match. Denise had to sit down. She'd known, but hearing it made it real. "How did she die?" Morrison's voice was careful. "Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. She was killed quickly, then buried within hours of death. The soil analysis confirms it. Someone had been waiting for her that night, had killed her, had buried her before the sun came up." "What happens now?" Denise asked. "Now we build a case, but I need that notebook." Denise had waited 45 years for this moment. She'd protected that notebook like it was her mother's last breath. And now she had to let it go. She met Morrison at the ranger office that afternoon, brought the notebook in a plastic bag. Her hands shook as she handed it over. Morrison opened it carefully, read the last page. His expression darkened. "Henderson Tract, Planning Commission, falsified reports." He looked up. "Your mother documented a conspiracy. Can you prove it?" "Maybe, if the financial records still exist." He closed the notebook. "I'm bringing in a forensic accountant, and we're going to need a warrant for the Riverside family's financial records from 1974. Will a judge approve that?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "They will now. We have a body, we have motive, and we have a sitting state senator who might be connected to a murder." The investigation moved faster than Denise thought possible. Within 2 weeks, forensic accountants had traced financial records from 1974. What they found was damning. On June 14th, 1974, the day after Clara disappeared, the Riverside family's business account transferred $50,000 to an offshore account. That account was owned by Judge Raymond Thornton. 2 days later, another transfer, $30,000 to a planning commissioner named Gerald Hughes. 3 weeks after that, the Henderson Tract deal went through, zoning approved, environmental inspections passed, construction permits issued, all of it based on falsified documents. The land deal had made the Riverside family millions, and it had been built on fraud, bribery, and murder. But the biggest discovery came from something nobody expected. In Richard Thornton's Austin law office, rangers executed a search warrant. They were looking for documents, financial records, anything connecting him to his father's crimes. What they found was Clara's original notebook. Not a copy, the original. Richard Thornton had kept it in his office safe for 45 years. When Ranger Morrison called to tell her, Denise couldn't speak. "Why would he keep it?" she finally asked. "Insurance," Morrison said. "If the Riversides ever turned on him, he had proof they were all guilty. It was his protection." "Or his guilt," Denise said quietly. On June 20th, 2019, Texas Rangers arrested Richard Thornton at his law office. The charges were accessory after the fact, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. He was 71 years old. 2 days later, they arrested Michael Riverside at his home in Austin. The news exploded across Texas. State senator arrested in 1974 cold case murder. The story was everywhere. Denise watched the coverage from her living room, saw Michael Riverside in handcuffs being led into a courthouse. The same man who'd picked up her mother that night. The same man who'd walked free for 45 years. He looked old now, fragile, nothing like the powerful young man from 1974. But Denise felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. The arraignment was set for July 8th. Denise sat in the front row of the courtroom. Carmen sat beside her, holding her hand. In Denise's lap was a photograph. Clara Simmons in her maid's uniform, standing on Oak Street, the last place anyone had admitted seeing her alive. Michael Riverside was brought in wearing an expensive suit. His lawyer stood beside him looking confident. The judge read the charges. Accessory after the fact to murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. How does the defendant plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. Denise's stomach turned. The prosecutor, a woman named Elizabeth Santos, stood. Your Honor, the state has overwhelming evidence. In June 1974, the defendant picked up the victim, Clara Simmons, from a bus stop. Witness testimony places him at the scene. Hours later, Ms. Simmons was dead and buried on property owned by the defendant's family business partner, Judge Raymond Thornton. Riverside's lawyer interrupted. My client was 21 years old in 1974, a law student. He had nothing to do with any alleged crime. Santos smiled coldly. Then perhaps the defendant can explain why his fingerprints were found on the shovel recovered from the burial site. A shovel that had been stored in Judge Thornton's barn for 45 years. The courtroom went silent. Riverside's face went pale. Santos continued. We also have financial records showing the defendant's family made emergency payments totaling $80,000 the day after Ms. Simmons disappeared. Payments that went directly to corrupt officials involved in an illegal land deal. A deal Ms. Simmons had documented in this notebook. She held up Clara's notebook in an evidence bag. The victim overheard a conversation about fraud and bribery. She wrote down what she heard, and for that, she was murdered. The defendant and his co-conspirator, Richard Thornton, disposed of her body and spent 45 years covering it up. Santos turned to face Riverside directly. Your family bought silence with money, but you couldn't buy it forever. She walked to where Denise sat and stopped. Ms. Simmons spent 45 years fighting for justice. She was threatened, harassed, told to let it go, but she never did. And now her mother's voice is finally being heard. Santos held up the notebook again. Clara Simmons wrote, Henderson tracked $50,000 to Planning Commission, falsified environmental reports, Judge Thornton approving paperwork. She set it on the prosecutor's table. This is evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and motive for murder. The defendant knew what was in this notebook. He knew his family would lose everything if it came out. So they made sure Clara Simmons never spoke again. The judge looked at Riverside. Does the defendant wish to revise his plea? Riverside's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Riverside spoke. His voice was barely audible. I was ordered to pick her up. My father said she'd overheard something. I drove her to the ranch. Judge Thornton was there. And what happened at the ranch? The judge asked. Riverside closed his eyes. She tried to run. The judge hit her with a shovel. I didn't know he was going to. I didn't plan for that. But you helped bury her. Silence. Answer the question. Yes, Riverside's voice broke. We buried her behind the barn. The judge said it was done, that nobody would look for a missing maid, that we'd all be fine as long as we stayed quiet. Denise felt tears streaming down her face. 45 years. 45 years of lies. And finally, the truth. Your Honor, Riverside's lawyer said quickly, my client would like to enter a plea of no contest in exchange for no deals, Santos said sharply. Not yet. The judge set a trial date. But 3 weeks later, Riverside changed his plea to no contest. Avoided trial, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Richard Thornton received the same. 8 years for helping cover up a murder for 45 years. Denise stood outside the courthouse after sentencing and spoke to reporters for the first and only time. My mother wasn't just a maid, she said. She was a witness. She saw corruption and she wrote it down, and they killed her for it. They made her disappear like she never mattered. She held up the photograph of Clara, but she did matter. She mattered to me, she mattered to her family, and now finally she matters to Texas. Someone asked if she felt justice had been served. Denise looked at the courthouse, thought about Michael Riverside, 70 years old, going to prison for maybe 3 years with good behavior. No, she said honestly. Justice would have been my mother coming home that night. Justice would have been someone listening 45 years ago. This isn't justice. This is just the end of the lie. But it was something. After 45 years of silence, Clara Simmons's voice had finally been heard, and the people who'd silenced her would finally pay. On August 17, 2019, 45 years and 2 months after she disappeared, Clara Simmons was finally laid to rest. The funeral was held at Bethel AME Church in East Dallas, the same church where Clara had sung in the choir every Sunday, the same church where she'd prayed for a better life for her children. Denise sat in the front pew with Carmen beside her. Little Clara, now 16, sat on her other side. 3 generations of women who'd all been shaped by one night in 1974. The church was packed, standing room only. News cameras lined the back wall. But it wasn't just reporters who came. Dozens of elderly black women filled the pews. Former maids, housekeepers, nannies, women who'd worked in homes where they were invisible. Women who'd heard things they weren't supposed to hear. Women who'd stayed silent because staying silent kept them alive. They came to honor Clara. One of them, a woman named Dorothy Hayes, stood during the service and spoke. "I worked in Highland Park in 1974, she said. Her voice was strong despite her age. "I knew Clara Simmons. She was kind, hard-working, a good mother. When she disappeared, we all knew what happened. We knew she didn't run away. But nobody would listen to us, because we were just maids, just help, just invisible." She looked at Denise. "Your mother saw something she shouldn't have seen, and it cost her everything. But her death meant something. It exposed evil that had been hidden for decades, and it reminded this state that black lives matter, even the lives they tried to erase." The church erupted in quiet amends. After the service, Clara was buried at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. Her headstone was simple. Clara May Simmons, 1932-1974, beloved mother, witness to truth. Denise stood by the grave long after everyone else had left. Carmen came and stood beside her. "Did you get what you needed, Mama?" Carmen asked quietly. Denise thought about that. "I got the truth. I don't know if that's the same thing." "Do you think Grandma would be proud?" "Yes," Denise's voice cracked, "but she'd rather be alive." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Carmen said, "What happens now? Now we remember her, and we make sure nobody forgets why she died." The consequences of Clara's case rippled far beyond one grave. 3 weeks after the sentencing, the Texas Attorney General announced a statewide review of unsolved cases involving black women from 1960 to 1990. Over 200 cases were reopened. Investigators started looking for patterns, disappeared maids, ignored reports, files that went missing. The Henderson track deal was also investigated. Prosecutors discovered the fraud extended beyond just the Riverside family. 4 more officials were indicted. 2 pleaded guilty. The entire planning commission from 1974 was exposed as corrupt. The Riverside family name was stripped from a public library in Dallas. A scholarship fund bearing their name was dissolved. The family's real estate empire collapsed as investors pulled out. Michael Riverside Jr., the senator's son, resigned from his position at the family company, issued a public apology. It meant nothing to Denise. Richard Thornton lost his law license. His firm removed his name from the letterhead. His children stopped speaking to him. Both men began serving their sentences in October 2019. 8 years for conspiracy and accessory to murder. They'd likely served 3 with good behavior. Clara had been dead for 45 years. The math didn't balance, it never would. But something else happened that Denise hadn't expected. In November 2019, a museum in Dallas contacted her. They were creating a permanent exhibit called The Silenced Stories of Invisible Women. They wanted to include Clara's story, display her photograph, her uniform, the notebook. Denise agreed. She donated Clara's Maid uniform, the one that had hung in her closet for 45 years. She gave them copies of the case file, photographs, everything she'd saved. The exhibit opened in February 2020. Denise attended with Carmen and little Clara. They stood in front of a glass case containing Clara's uniform. Beside it was the photograph from Oak Street, and next to that, a copy of the notebook entry. The words Clara had written in her last hours. Henderson tracked, 50,000 to Planning Commission, falsified reports, words that had cost her life, words that had finally exposed the truth. A plaque beside the display read, Clara Simmons, 1932-1974, a domestic worker who witnessed corruption and paid the ultimate price. Her daughter's 45-year fight for justice revealed systemic failures in investigating crimes against black women. Clara's courage reminds us that every voice matters, even those society tries to silence. Little Clara touched the glass gently. She looks like you, Grandma. Denise wiped her eyes. She was stronger than me. No, Carmen said softly. She gave you her strength. That's why you never gave up. And maybe that was true. Maybe Clara's real legacy wasn't the murder case or the arrests or the museum exhibit. Maybe it was the daughter who'd refused to forget. The daughter who'd fought for 45 years, even when everyone told her to stop. The daughter who'd proved that a black maid from East Dallas mattered. That her life had value. That her death demanded answers. In the weeks after the exhibit opened, Denise received letters from women across Texas, daughters of disappeared mothers, sisters of missing women, families who'd been told their loved ones didn't matter. They thanked her for fighting, for refusing to be silenced, for showing them it was possible to get answers even when the system was designed to hide the truth. Denise kept every letter. One was from a woman in Houston whose mother had disappeared in 1968 while working as a housekeeper. I always thought I was alone, the letter said. But your mother's story gave me hope. I'm reopening my mother's case. Thank you for not giving up. That letter made Denise cry for an hour, because Clara's death had been senseless and cruel and wrong. But maybe it could mean something if it helped others find justice. Maybe that was the point all along. On the first anniversary of Clara's burial, Denise visited the grave with both Carmens. They brought flowers, sat on the grass, talked to Clara like she was still there. We did it, Mama, Denise said quietly. We got them. It took 45 years, but we got them. The wind rustled through the trees. Denise thought about the girl she'd been at 16, terrified, alone, desperate for someone to care that her mother was gone. She thought about all the years of silence, the threats, the harassment, the moments she'd almost given up. She thought about holding that notebook for decades, knowing it was the only proof her mother's life had mattered. And she thought about Clara standing at that bus stop in 1974, waiting to go home. Clara never made it home, but now finally she was at rest, and the world knew her name. The world knew what she'd witnessed. The world knew she'd been murdered for telling the truth. That was worth something. Maybe not justice, but truth. And sometimes, after 45 years of lies, truth is the closest thing to justice you'll ever get. Denise stood to leave, touched the headstone one last time. Rest easy, Mama, she whispered. Your voice finally got heard. Friend, thank you for staying with me to the very end of Clara's story. If you believe that every life matters, that the silence deserved to be heard, and that justice, even when it comes late, is still worth fighting for, then please subscribe to this channel. These are the stories that need to be told, the ones history tried to erase. I've picked out another story just for you, and you should see it on the screen now. A story about another woman who refused to stay silent. I hope to see you there.